I'm really hoping that that whoever needs to get something out of this tonight, that you get what you need out of it. And what I wanted to do is just start by telling my story just a little bit so you can understand my journey, and we'll go from there. So I've been plant-based since high school, many decades, and the whole time for decades, I actually did struggle with my weight. And kind of a good thing to be aware of is I think there's a perception that if you eat plant-based, you wouldn't have any weight issues. And that's just really silly when you know, those of us who do eat plant-based, we all have the same temptations. So I'm hoping that we can sort of normalize that piece and understand we're just like everybody else. And whoever's here, whatever you choose to eat, this will be relevant for you. And if you are somebody who's looking to transition to more and more of a plant-based way of eating, I think you'll hear some things today too that will help you make that transition. So I struggled with my weight and I did all those crazy diets. And I'm sure there's somebody on here who's heard of these things. Does anybody remember the Beverly Hills diet? That was, yeah, Alicia in the house. That's, it was just fruit. You ate one fruit one day and another fruit the next day, and you did this for a whole week. And so maybe you would lose some weight. But the thing is, obviously, you're just probably not going to eat fruit for the rest of your life, only fruit. So gain the weight back. My favorite that always gets a laugh in my head is I did a potato diet. I ate 3 potatoes a day, 1 for breakfast, 1 for lunch, and 1 for dinner. It worked. I lost 25 pounds in like a month. But how long do you think I could sustain that? So I tried all these super restrictive diets. And the truth is you can lose weight doing those things. But I think over time we come to realize it's a little pointless to just kind of have that up and down. And not only that, it gets frustrating to have to do it over and over again. So what I'm sharing with you tonight, well, before I get to that, I want to tell you two more things. That I truly have the belief that there was no upper limit to how much I could weigh. I really, truly believed that. And that the way I maintained kind of, for me, any sense of what was sort of okay for me was doing these crazy diets so I could lose a bunch of weight, but then only to gain it again. And then there was even a time when I started eating healthy. And I got really frustrated when healthy wasn't working. So that's when I actually mentioned it to my doctor, and she suggested I try Weight Watchers. And one of the things that was going on at that time too that was very kind of a precipitated me making the, you know, going and getting some help was, I don't know if anybody can relate to this, but there's the frustration of the closet. And lots of my clients tell me this, where, you know, when your weight's fluctuating and it feels so uncomfortable, like I have to try on everything to find something that I fit. I don't want to participate in social events because I don't know what I'm going to wear. So this is all about how you feel. There's no right weight to be. It's just about you feeling good in your skin, both physically and mentally. So as I said, about 14 years ago, doctors suggested I try Weight Watchers, and I was very and continue to be successful. I did lose and get to goal on Weight Watchers. And what I really learned from them was more balance. And I learned about the relative kind of calorie value of different foods. And I'm going to talk about that, this idea of like, oh, I was eating all kinds of nutritious, but I wasn't losing weight. Well, more about that to come. So I definitely learned about balance and some basic food things. And that gave me so much freedom, and freedom to feel like I could do whatever I wanted. And I really loved it. And I was so thrilled to be able, they had some part-time job up, and I was so happy that I could, I can help other people feel this too. So I just love helping people. And I've done that now been maintaining my weight and helping people with Weight Watchers, definitely hundreds, I think thousands maybe tens of thousands. I don't know. But and then more recently, as my kids were going off to college and I was thinking, like, what's next for me? I went back to school, and it was a one-year program, and I got certified as a life coach. And some of you might have no idea what that is. It was a life and weight loss coach. But the only important thing for you to know right now, I think, is that learned about the mindset piece. Like, why do we do what we do? So it's one thing to know what to do. It's another thing to actually do it. And in this training, I just learned so much about how the mind works. And I'm hoping that you're going to take away some really good foundational basics that you can implement right away for yourself too. So let me go ahead and just give you a sense of what it is we're going to be talking about today. Okay, so the topic today is minding your weight the vegan way. And as you know, it's brought to you by the Vegan Solutions team of Resilient Palisades. And so today we're going to cover 4 basic areas, or really 3. The first is, what is the problem? And I'm going to offer that the problem is the deck is really stacked against us. It is just so easy to overeat. And in fact, it's difficult not to. I'm going to talk to you about why that is. Then I'm going to talk about the solution, like how can we shift the deck back into our favor? And then I'm going to give you some tools that you can start to just put into practice right away and start using some of these food and mindset tools. And then we'll have plenty of time for questions at the end. So I think now I am going to go ahead and start talking a little bit more about what the problem is. So I love this word that I learned many years ago. We live in what I love to call, what I've heard is an obesogenic society. It's exactly what it sounds like. There's food everywhere, right? It's the quantity of food, big portions. It's where the food is, you know, like everywhere. I mean, you're at the hardware store and it's right there at the checkout. What business does it have being there? And overeating has become the norm. The statistic that I was going to tell you was 70% of Americans in the US are overweight. I mean, is that crazy? 70%. So clearly there is something going on. Why are there so many people overweight? Well, there's some degree of overeating going on here. And why is that happening? So one that I'm offering there is, you know, just the societal, what is normal. Overeating is normal. And also, you know, we're a society where we're not really taught a lot about how to handle our emotions, and a lot of us turn to food for emotional comfort. Today, that's not really going to be what I'm going to be covering, but that is something that falls within the realm of mindset work as well. The second piece, so we've got society working against us, just what's normal, and then we have the food industry. So let's face it, food companies are in business to make money, right? So there's all kinds of nutritional science out there to find ways to make the foods just so palatable, just so it has the perfect mouthfeel. There's even something called the bliss point, and it's a combination of sugar, fat, and salt. So if something's salty, they add sugar. If it's sweet, they add salt, and you get the point. So it makes it pretty hard not to overeat those things. They're just unusually delicious, and they're created that way. And then there are some consequences too of the modern convenience of having food so readily available. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. Okay, painted the picture about the problem. I don't think there's a lot of surprise there. Let's talk about the solution, how we're going to switch it back in our favor. We're going to make it easier. How can we make it easier not to overeat? And how can we bridge that gap between, well, I sort of know what to do, but it's hard. Why aren't I doing that? And I'm going to do it from two perspectives. First, we're going to look at the food standpoint. And if our problem is overeating, we're going to look at normalizing hunger and normalizing desire. So we want to bring those two things back into sort of a more natural state. And then we're going to talk about some brain basics, and we're going to talk about how can we work with our brain. And I'm going to share some fundamentals that then can help understand the way the brain works and how we can work with it to make it easier for us to make those choices. So, okay. So I'm going to do just a little bit of geeky science stuff here. Different people like different things. And for those of you who like a little bit of this information, I'm just going to share that. So when we're talking about how we bring down the, like making us less hungry, having us desire food less, having us, there's also balancing our hormones in a natural way where we can actually lose weight. And so let me go ahead and bring up a slide, and this is going to be a little geeky with science, but we won't stay there long. Okay. So what I'm showing you here is kind of a few of the basic things I want you to take away regarding food, okay? So again, if our goal is to make it easier to not overeat, there's 5 suggestions that I'm going to offer. And the first one is to really pay attention to how much of these concentrated, refined, processed, packaged foods that we eat. And I'm going to tell you why. Like we still have basically the same body as we did a million years ago, you know, as humans, and we're just not designed to handle the concentrated foods. And these concentrated foods, think sugar, it gives us this giant, here comes the geeky part, giant dopamine hit. So that's the feel-good hormone. So suddenly we down-regulate, and we need more and more and more to satisfy that level of pleasure. Another thing that happens with these types of foods is, I mentioned the bliss point idea with a lot of these foods, so it's just a lot easier to overeat, which can also increase our cravings because our desire for these foods is so high. And then the more of these foods, it actually interferes with the way our hormones are meant to be. So it interferes with our signals that tell us if we're hungry or when we're full. Those are leptin and ghrelin. Also, when we eat these foods, we get a spike of, a sugar spike, and the body releases insulin, and insulin is a fat storing hormone. So we're in fat storing mode. So in my 3 little categories here, do those sorts of foods make us satisfied and satiated? Maybe, a little bit, and then maybe you get a stomach ache after a while, or maybe they don't keep you full for very long. But really, they interfere with sort of the normal, natural functioning of our hormones, which has all of these effects that I mentioned. Now, on the flip side, this is a beautiful thing for those of us who eat plant-based, is to really lean into those veggies. Now, it is also possible to be plant-based and not eat that many vegetables. And I would just suggest just load up on those vegetables. They do fill us up. They give us a lot of volume. So it feels like I'm satisfied, like I don't just have a little piece of nothing on my plate. It's got fiber, which slows down our digestion, and that's one of the reasons why it helps with the hormonal balance. So like if we were to have some sugar, if we have it when we're also having some of these veggies, it helps balance out and reduce the insulin. Again, the insulin puts us in a fat storing mode. So it minimizes the spikes. So lots of good stuff that the veggies are doing, filling us up, crowding out other things, making our plate look better. Okay, plenty of protein. Now, I'm not saying this like to suggest that as eating plant-based, we have any problem with getting enough protein. I'm offering this for the sake of fullness. Protein just lasts longer, keeps us feeling full longer than do carbs. And as eating plant-based, our protein sources tend to be include more carbs. So what I'm going to offer here is just really think about at every meal, including some sort of animal-based protein. Just to, include some protein with your meals. The next bit, and this again, for those of us who eat plant-based, I would say this is like the biggest point that I could make, because again, it's difficult to make the best choices when we're hungry if we're not getting enough of those. Like I had that experience. I don't know if anybody else has had this, but like I'd be with my family. I was the only one who ate plant-based growing up, and we'd go out and everybody else, would be eating meat or whatever, and they wouldn't be hungry for 5 hours, but like 2 hours later, an hour and a half later, I was hungry again, and that goes back to kind of the quick sugar spike, and then you get the drop, and those things go through your body very quickly, and then you get hungry again. So really just think about almost like swapping out what would have been an animal protein for a plant-based protein. The next bit are the energy dense foods, and those are going to be things, so we're saying these are things that have a lot of calories relative to the size. So these are great, delicious foods that we want to include: nuts and healthy oils and avocado, and those are going to be fine for our hormones. Just want to be careful about our portions of those things. And I said that I would come back and mention this. And for me, my experience was where I said, even when I started eating healthy, and legitimately, I was eating really good stuff, but in the quantity I was eating it, it wasn't helpful for weight loss. And until I went to, that was where Weight Watchers really taught me something, that like I would take my oatmeal, and I have oatmeal, and I'd add wheat germ and lecithin and nuts and raisins. And, by the time it was all said and done, and, a big portion of it too. So just creating that awareness around that just because it's nutritious doesn't mean it's also useful for weight loss in the quantities we eat them. So just to kind of watch out for that. And also to say, include delicious things. The goal here is to be, not be hungry and to be satisfied. Enjoy your foods. And, things like this, the avocado and olive oil, there's things that really add some delicious yumminess to things. And so don't be afraid to include those. And then the last bit, like the mock meats, the things like the Beyond Burgers and things, they're fabulous. They've added so much convenience, certainly satisfying and filling. I'm not quite sure about the hormone impact. It's probably going to be very dependent upon how much, it's processed. But what I do want you to take away is that there is no calorie benefit. Okay, so switching to the plant-based versions of a hamburger or whatever, those are fine, those are great, but just know that it's not going to be a way of saving calories. Okay, my friends, I am going to shift now into the next section and start talking about the brain science piece. And again, there's going to be an opportunity at the end for us to answer any questions that you might have. So I am playing around for a second here. And what I'm going to share, I have 2 videos that I'm going to share with you. And then we'll talk about them afterwards. But I think these are going to give you a really nice sense of some of the foundational ideas around the way the brain works. So here we go. And if for some reason you're not getting sound or something, wave wildly and let me know what's happening here. But I think we're going to be good. So here we go.
Not so long ago, many scientists believed that the brain did not change after childhood, that it was hardwired and fixed by the time we became adults. But recent advances in only the last decade now tell us that this is simply not true. The brain can and does change throughout our lives. It is adaptable, like plastic. Hence, neuroscientists call this neuroplasticity. How does neuroplasticity work? If you think of your brain as a dynamic, connected power grid, there are billions of pathways or roads lighting up every time you think, feel, or do something. Some of these roads are well-travelled. These are our habits, our established ways of thinking, feeling, and doing. Every time we think in a certain way, practice a particular task, or feel a specific emotion, we strengthen this road. It becomes easier for our brains to travel this pathway. Say we think about something differently, learn a new task, or choose a different emotion. We start carving out a new road. If we keep travelling that road, our brains begin to use this pathway more, and this new way of thinking, feeling, or doing becomes second nature. The old pathway gets used less and weakens. This process of rewiring your brain by forming new connections and weakening old ones is neuroplasticity in action. The good news is that we all have the ability to learn and change by rewiring our brains. If you have ever changed a bad habit or thought about something differently, you have carved a new pathway in your brain and experienced neuroplasticity firsthand. With repeated and directed attention towards your desired change, you can rewire your brain.
So let's see. All right. How cool is that? So, so the takeaway there is that we can change. And as kids, we look forward to the future and we imagine what's possible for us. And as we get older, we look to the past for evidence of what's possible for us. And I'm hoping that you can see here that we can really actually rewire our brain, and it just takes repetition. And kind of a really simple example of this is like brushing your teeth. You know, as a kid, you may have needed to be reminded or arm twisted to actually brush your teeth. But for most of us to remember to do that, it's not a big struggle. We just kind of do it. So as we strengthen one pathway, you know, the other one weakens. And so we, you know, good habits can become bad habits can become good habits. So it can work both ways. So I have one more video that I'm going to share with you. And
This is a test of selective attention. Count how many times the players wearing white pass the basketball. How many passes did you count? The correct answer is 15 passes. But did you see the gorilla? This video is from research by Daniel Simons and Christopher Chabris.
Okay, if that isn't crazy, I don't know, I can't see all of you right now on the screen, but if you're anything like me and others I've done this with, you might not have seen that gorilla. And how crazy is that? I mean, it even stopped and was pounding his chest. So the takeaway I want you to have here is, we've heard about the idea of selective perception, and couldn't be hit over the head more with this. We see what we are looking for. We're giving our brain direction, and it's very difficult to think that anything is true other than what we currently believe. And you can see we just reinforce. We believe something, we find more of it, and we provide more evidence. And that's where it's so helpful to stop and really look at what's going on in your brain. And that's one of the things that we do as a coach, is we help you look inside your brain, because like when you're looking yourself, it's like dust, you don't even notice it when you're living in it. So it takes some real work to start paying attention and then just questioning, is this just what I'm looking for, or is this really what's happening? Okay, one more brain basic, and then I'm going to give you some tools, and then we're going to chat. So the last one is that if we can think of our brain in a really simple way, and excuse me, it's just really basic here, but if we can think about two parts of the brain, one being the more primitive part of our brain and one being the more evolved part of our brain. And the primitive part, it's responsible for keeping us alive. That's its job. So it controls things like our, blood pumping through. It also is very reactive. When we're in that mode, we're very focused on survival. Because it's focused on survival, it's naturally looking for danger. So it sees danger everywhere, and just doing something different, the primitive brain sees as dangerous. It's like leaving the cave. As long as you're in the cave, you're safe. But once you go out, there's potential danger. So this is something that makes it a little tricky to actually change, because everything in your primitive brain is saying, don't change, don't change. I like the way you are, you're safe. Okay, so there's that part. The other part, or another part, is the more evolved brain. And this is the part that can actually reason, think about consequences. And what's the great news is that the evolved brain can actually override the primitive brain. So in other words, the reasoning brain can talk back to the primitive brain. So how that might show up is, I used to say I felt like an alien took over my body. Sometimes it was like I just felt like it was out of control eating. Like I knew what I was doing, but I just felt like I couldn't stop. Think of that as that's the primitive part of your brain just doing what it wants. It's got the urge and the desire, and it just wants it, and it wants it now. And the opportunity, when you realize this, is that you know that you also do have the more advanced part of your brain, and you have the ability to talk back to the primitive brain. So it's not a surprise if these things are going to happen. And once you're aware of that, you can prepare ahead of time some discussion and literally talking back to the other part of our brain. All right, so, the last thing I'm going to say about that, so it does require thinking on purpose. So the primitive brain is just going to happen automatically, but for us to use this more advanced part of our brain to sort of be in charge, we have to do that intentionally. It's not just going to happen automatically. Okay, So I'm going to give you 3 sort of exercises, tools. So we have a whole toolkit of how we can start rewiring our brain. And I'm just going to give you 3 that you can start playing with and right away. You've got some ideas on the food and sort of understanding why food choices make a difference, might make you feel like you're more interested in making those changes. It's not just because somebody told you to do it. You can understand how it's going to help reduce your desire and make you stay full longer. So now we've talked about some basics on the brain, and I'm going to give you 3 tools that you can start using. So the first one kind of ties into the last foundational concept I gave you, which was sort of the evolved brain and the primitive brain. So a nice metaphor that really works well for me is think of the evolved brain as the loving parent. And then think about the primitive brain as the toddler. Okay, so the toddler just wants it and wants it now, but the loving parent knows what's best, has more experience, and very gently and lovingly helps lead the toddler. So think about it at the grocery store, right? And at the checkout line, you probably see it all the time. I'm sure I had it with my kids, is, the candy's there. I want it, Mom. I want it, Mom. And then there's the opportunity for the parent to lovingly, maybe sometimes, yeah, okay, you can have some. And maybe the, wise, loving parent can say, you know what, I know that you get a stomach ache when you eat this. And so I know it sounds like really good. We'll go home and, so just to gently talk to this other part of ourselves and sort of talk it down. And it's really important, the piece of being compassionate. So I like the idea of showing up, because we're not bullying ourselves into doing something different. We understand this primitive brain. We understand why the toddler wants it and wants it now. And we're just engaging the more wise part of ourselves, the more evolved part. Okay, so that's number 1. Number 2 is to have a look at what is your story around weight loss. In other words, like, what do you tell yourself? Some really common things that I hear is, I've got too much going on, to focus on weight loss. It's hard for me. It's harder for me than other people. It's just not fair. It just doesn't work. When we tell ourselves these things, remember, if we go back to the gorilla and the selective perception, we find what we are looking for. So it's really not a useful question to say, why isn't this working? Because we kind of know all the reasons why it's not working. A more useful question is to ask, how can I make this work? And again, we're giving the brain a job to help solve a problem rather than doubling down on the way we're currently thinking. And also, I want to add, remember at the beginning, I was saying I believed, like, before I kind of learned these things, I used to feel like there was no upper limit to how much I could weigh. That was my belief. That was my story about myself, that I was a yo-yo, that I couldn't stop. Once I started, it took me a long, it was either on or off. But now I very much come, and this relates to how we really can change and rewire. I truly believe now that I'll always be a healthy weight. I mean, I'm so far from perfect, and the really great thing to know is you don't have to be perfect. And it's really just a lot more about the moderation. But coming from that belief, that's how we make it work. So some of you who know me know that I've got this amazing parking karma. I just get the best parking spot. I just do. Now, do I have some magic? No, I used to think I did, but now I really know what's going on. What's going on is back to the, you believe you can, you believe you can't, you make it happen. So I believe I get the parking spot. So what do? I'm calm. I slow down. I'm looking around. I'm not in any rush. And inevitably, I find the spot. which is a very different experience than think about like you're all stressed and you're running around and you're just zooming around and less likely to find the spot. So just be aware of what you're telling yourself and question, is this useful? And if it's not useful, you might consider what else is possible, what else might also be true that serves me better. And the third one, and my clients just love this exercise, is that you could write a letter. So imagine I see you on the screen, Alicia, so I'm going to use you as my example. So imagine Alicia a year from now, who has gotten just lost those last couple of pounds and is exactly where she wants to be. And actually, let's say it's 5 years and she's maintained it beautifully and it's nice and easy for her. And that Alicia is going to write a letter to Alicia today. And that Alicia is going to give her advice and share with her, this is what I learned along the way. And you didn't realize you were really thinking it was hard. But once you learned that thing Tobi told you, well, suddenly you started seeing things differently. And you know what? It really wasn't that hard. And and so on and so forth. So you have that story with yourself. And then the really cool thing is you do identify some wisdom from this future self. And it's so relevant and useful because with all of the diet mentality out there, all of the diets that we hear about, we've stopped learning to trust ourselves. And so by accessing our own wisdom, like, let's just get back to the basics. Our bodies know what to do. And if we listen to our bodies and we pay attention to when I'm hungry and when I'm not hungry, and we practice balance, it's all so much easier and lovely. So I have come to the end of this section, and what I'm going to do is I am going to open it up for questions. And yeah, I'd love to hear from anyone. So if you have a question, you could either raise your hand. I know we've been around the block with Zoom, a lot of us here, and if you move your cursor on the bottom over the reactions, you could raise your hand, or if you have a question, you can type it in the chat. And if you don't want to speak up and have a question, that's okay too. I can talk to you about some of the common questions that come up. Maybe as you're thinking about it, one thing that I'm going to offer is for you to really just think about what we talked about here today and apply it to yourself. Like, how can you actually make it work? Like, think about like the different food suggestions we had. Like, what's a small
Tobi, really quick,
change you could have?
Marcia does have a question.
Thank you, Alicia. Marcia, hello.
Hello, everyone. I just wanted to share, I was a Weight Watcher for many, many decades, and I met Tobi in 2010. And I never lost as much weight as I had lost on Weight Watchers. And I really owe it to both myself and Tobi. Tobi was so inspiring and so encouraging. And one day I woke up and I sat at the edge of my bed and I said, I can have whatever I want. This is between my ears. This is in my head. And I completely changed my whole mindset. And I kept the weight off for 8 years. And during COVID, I had to take care of my mom. My mom passed away last year. And it was such a traumatic moment to be left with, my mother was 98 years old, and to be left taking care of her all by myself. And I lost the ball a little and I gained weight, and I'm now losing it again, and I'm on Weight Watchers. I worked with Tobi privately. I worked with her at Weight Watchers. She is, I'm going to say it because I just think Tobi is so inspiring and inspirational, and she's so smart, and she lets you see things in such a great way that motivates people to do changes for themselves, whatever it is. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you, Marcia. You're embarrassing me, but thank you. Thank you for that.
No, really, I mean, it is what it is.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. So this is what I'm going to do, guys. I'm going to give you just some sort of closing and wrap up, give you some things to think about. So this is what we talked about today. We did that. So I'm just going to summarize what we talked about with food. So we want to make it easier to not overeat. So the way we do that is we want to make it so that we don't get as hungry as quickly. We want to reduce our cravings. We want to get our hormones to a more natural level that supports our weight loss. And some basic ways to do that: eat plenty of vegetables, plenty of protein for fullness, pay attention to your portions, regardless of how nutritious it is. Opt for less processed foods whenever possible. And it's funny, I can't even see on the screen what my last thing is. Oh, I think it's that know that the mock foods, you know, they might be really helpful from a flavor and a convenience standpoint, but they're really not saving you calorie wise.
Tobi, we have a quickie question, if you can,
Yeah,
from
sure.
Nixie. And she's asking a very good one. How do you feel about using food as a reward? And don't we all do that? Okay.
What do you think I'm gonna say?
Eat your broccoli.
Well, so this goes to the idea of if there's nothing wrong with enjoying food. There's nothing wrong with having some celebration with food and whatnot. The issue is if it starts getting in the way with us feeling healthy, feeling mentally and physically well, if we find that we are turning to food to change how we're feeling, that's something to take a look at. So I'm not sure if I answered that question, but you can go ahead and put a follow-up question there. But basically what I'm saying is it's only a problem if you find it's creating a result in your life that's one that you don't want. Otherwise, maybe you're just doing it in a moderate way, and you know, you get to choose if that's how you want to celebrate. Let's see, I see another question. How do you not overeat? Is someone following a plant-based diet? Since I hear vegans eat a large amount of carbohydrates, should I fear full of carbs? No, do not fear carbs. Carbs
Thank
are
you,
fine.
Tobi, for that.
Carbs are fine, and especially the complex carbs. You know, when we're talking about the vegetables and the beans, these sorts of things, no, they are not a problem. When we, and as a fact, we need carbs, you know, and I'm just going to say in a general sense, carbs are fine. We're going to let our scale be the guide for us. But most importantly, there's a very different, it's a big difference between having a cookie and having some beans. Big difference. And so
Or a black bean, a brownie. Hello.
that's somewhere in between. I would say the black beans are probably making it a little slowing down that metabolism a little bit. But that's a really great question. And actually, I'm so glad you asked that, Jordan, because for a lot of people who are transitioning to plant-based, I hear that that's something that they're concerned about, because they're concerned, they've heard all this buzz, the carbs are bad, and then they're concerned that how would that affect their weight if they transition into plant-based, which naturally does have more carbs. But when they're complex carbs and they're nutritious carbs, I would offer that that's not a problem at all. I've heard most blue zones with people living to 100 eat low protein and high carb diets. Could be. What I'm talking about here today is nutritious and from the standpoint of weight loss. And I'm not a nutritionist or somebody who studies longevity, so I really can't speak to that. My only thing that I would say is that my personal general philosophy is balance. And one more thing that I'd love to leave you with is that wherever you are at, start there. You don't have to make dramatic changes. So if you are used to the convenience of some different kinds of packaged foods, and you heard today that maybe I want to cut back on those, maybe like one meal, just make small changes. It really does not have to be gigantic at all. Actually, I was talking to a group earlier this morning, even like quantity wise, if you were to just leave 2 bites on your plate at every meal, you'd be shocked how much that adds up. And as an exercise, one of my teachers shared was that if you saved those 2 bites, put it in a plastic bag in the freezer, you'd be amazed after 1 week how much food is in there. And that's just kind of representative of like really little tiny changes really add up. Ingrid, I saw you had your hand up. If you still have a question, you are welcome to come on, but if you had that answered, that would be fine too.
Hi, yeah. I hope you don't mind if I thank you for this presentation. So interesting what you had to say about how the brain functions. I have found myself in a space of healthy eating plant-based people who are focused on actually a high carbohydrate diet. This group of people, I can mention some names, are very focused on the idea that, especially with highly processed foods, the dopamine hits that you're talking about, they look a lot like addiction. It looks a lot like an alcoholic or a drug addict. And in fact, they've mentioned, various studies where, rats will go for sugar and they'll leave the cocaine because it's so addictive. And so you talked about these foods being designed to give us these hits that actually take the form for some people of what's essentially an addiction. And there's actually a growing body of evidence and scientists out there working on this, talking about food addiction. But now you don't give an alcoholic, you don't say to an alcoholic, everything in moderation, right? You say to the alcoholic, you get every single bit of alcohol out of your house and you never have it in your house, right? And for those of us who have these addictive characteristics, which I think is probably a lot of people, because these foods are designed to be addictive. If you had cocaine every now and then, a lot of people, not everyone gets addicted to cocaine, but a lot of people do. And the same with these highly addictive foods. So in my view, and what's really worked for me and has really changed my yo-yo dieting to not be yo-yoing at all anymore, is to just accept that there's certain foods that for me are like an alcoholic reacts to alcohol, I react to that food. And the answer for me is not moderation at all. It's like, I don't eat processed foods anymore at all. No processed foods, no highly processed foods, I should say. I do eat tofu and some other things that are processed and what you might call moderately processed foods. But for me, the message of moderation really was not a helpful one. And I think for a lot of people, it's not helpful because that loving parent part of the brain doesn't work if you're addicted. The toddler is ruling the roost. The toddler's in charge completely. And an addicted person is not able to get that that parent figure in the room unless they change the environment. The environment needs to have none of the bad stuff. You need to be in an alcohol-free environment if you're an alcoholic. You need to not go to the bar. And if you are addicted to certain food substances, highly processed foods, you need to not have them in your house. And you need to not have them in moderation because you won't do it.
Yeah, thank you for that, Ingrid. I could totally appreciate that. And I think everybody has to figure out like what works for them as an individual. And if it is that example, of course, of, if we kind of looked at a bell curve, for some people, it is an easier solution to just have none. And you know that for yourself. And for many people, there is another way. And part of it is there is something to, it's not just the mindset piece that I'm talking about, it's also the food piece when we start normalizing more like how much of these foods we have, that we get our hormones back into a place where we are aware of our hunger signals, where when we have these foods less, like that dopamine, it re-regulates a little lower and a little lower. Like if you've ever been somebody who eats a lot of sweets and then you go for a while not having so many, I can speak specifically to sweets. For many people, we find that like that craving really does go away a lot. So I certainly know that there is an approach, which is sort of the all or nothing. And, even from my school, there's people who teach like no sugar, no flour. And, if you are wanting to live eating a certain way, really, you're going to do what works for you. And I do think that, or I have found that many people can also do with the moderation. And even I'll add at my school, and I was trained at the life coach school, there's people who do coach on alcohol addiction. And there is a program, I can't totally speak to it, but where with the mindset tools, it is effective for a lot of people to actually be able to have some. And I totally respect everybody. And that's the thing about trusting yourself, right, guys? And that's what I'm trying to say is yourself best. And if that's what you found, trust your instinct. Yeah.
Thank you. I really appreciate you saying that. I think for all of us, it's a journey, and we each have to find what works for us.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm seeing Sarah mentioned, it took me years to go vegan, cutting out one element, red meat, then all meat, fish, dairy, finally eggs. Over the course of 2 years, feels great, but I'm a sucker for vegan junk food. Yeah, okay. All right, maybe that's your next thing to play with a little bit. Most before is the healthiest version. Yeah. All right, so let's just go ahead and wrap up. Thank you guys for.
I just want to add something really quick, if you can, Toby, to Nixie's version of how do we use food as a reward. Toby and I have gone to this place called Optimum Health Institute in San Diego. It's a vegan raw food program for all kinds of health issues. And one of the presentations I'll never forget is that when you go to this place, you're really detoxing, you're cleansing, you're really serious about the program for at least that week. And, the teacher of that class put it so wisely. He's like, why do we think that when we go on a cruise or when we go to a party, we're treating ourselves when we're overeating and over drinking and really messing up our bodies, when we're here at this raw food vegan place, really taking every single nutrient that goes straight to what the body really needs. So that's really treating ourselves. So back to the mental perspective of saying, what are we really doing to our bodies when we drink, when we do the sugar, when we do, overeating or whatever, when we could be really treating ourselves by drinking more water, by going on a walk, by having that broccoli or the you know, the black bean brownie instead of the, you know.
Yeah, no, that's such a great point. I really love that you mentioned that. Yeah, thank you for that. Okay, let me just give you a last parting slide here really quick. So, I'm not sure if I had shared this one yet, but just change is possible. You know, we find what we're looking for, knowing the difference between the various parts of our brain, and that, you know, I would suggest that even if maybe in one part of your life there is some addiction or whatever, that these tools, they really work for anything. So if you're looking to switch to more of a plant-based way of eating, if you're looking to get more done, if you know, if we can just be aware that we do have more power than we realize when we set our mind to it. So 3 tools that I was offering was the IDing your story, putting your evolved brain in charge, and to access the wisdom of this future self. So I want to thank you all for coming here today on behalf of me and Resilient Palisades and the Vegan Solutions Group. And I just wanted to offer, if anybody wanted some follow-up, if you wanted, I actually have some worksheets on the few topics we talked about today. And if you had some questions, like specifically how any of this would apply to you, it would really be my pleasure to offer you a free call, and you would just contact me and we'll set that up. I'm Tobi at Best Life Coach Tobi. Tobi's TOBI. So it's really easy to find me on all social media. I'm at Best Life Coach Tobi. You came to this event, I think you'll be able to find me. So thank you again, and I'm so glad you came. I hope you got something out of this tonight.
No, it was wonderful.
Thank you, Tobi.
Question, yeah, Amanda had a question about moderation, so I think you responded both to Ingrid and hopefully Amanda too. And can I add, I need to add this because this is, I just being a vegan for the last 9 years and vegetarian for 32 or so before that, I just personally found out this great piece of news. All the protein in your veggies and fruits that most of us didn't know. 1 cup of kale is 3 grams of protein, believe it or not. Even a cup of carrot is 1 gram. 25 grams of spinach is 2 grams of protein. 1 cup of broccoli, it's 2.5 grams. Even a cup of lettuce has 0.5 gram. So you'll be surprised how it adds up in your day. 1 charred leaf, it's almost 1 gram. 1 purple sweet potato is 2 grams. A yam is gram. Even a banana has 1 gram. So you'll be surprised if you put it all together in a nice platter, you're getting a nice beef steak worth of real food and cruelty-free, which is vegetables and fruits. Yeah.
I love how you're all hanging on here. You might have some more questions. Maybe you walked away from the computer and you don't even know. But I'll be on for a couple of more minutes if anybody wanted to ask any other questions, whether you want to
5 new messages
or whatever. Yeah.
I know that Annie Faye wanted to thank you. She needs to leave early, and you're having Nancy, thank you, and Jordan, muchas gracias. And thank you, Amanda. Most affordable vegan diet is the healthiest version. So true, Sarah. Veggies are affordable. Yes, and remember your grains, and there's so much seeds and nuts and plenty there for all of us.
Thank you for attending, everybody. If you would like to head out, you can. If anybody has any lingering thoughts or questions, we could be on for a couple more minutes to address it.
Yeah, and I think Alex mentioned that there will be a recording of this that will be put up on YouTube. So if you think that there's somebody else who this could help, that will be up in a couple days or so, I guess.
And bring your kombucha, and we can hang around for a little bit. What time? Oh, it's 8 o'clock. Oops. That's a question.
Where did you find that information, Alicia? So about the protein in the vegetables? Is there a,
You know what? I have it. I'm sure you can find it online. It's hold on. I have a photo of it that I just found out recently, and it's protein in your veggies and fruits. You probably can just Google that. I don't have a specific like place where I got it. I think if you just go protein in your veggies and fruits, this is a cutie. We actually have it as a poster in Vegan Solutions team, because we do you know, presentations also through or the vegan food truck events, or you can see us sometimes in the farmers market on Sundays here in the Palisades by Starbucks. If you have any more questions.
thank you.
Yes.
And I just want to add, Ivy, you know, on the Weight Watchers app, if you were to type in, you'd have to do one thing at a time, but any food you put in, it gives you all the nutritional information. So if you typed in a banana and scroll down, it'll tell you everything.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Toby.
All right. Thank you guys for being here. Okay.
Thank you, Toby. Thank you so much.
Bye, Sarah.
That was perfect, Toby. That was really nice presentation. Hi, Sharam. Thanks for being here. So nice.
Hey, how are you?
Yes, we see Sharam at all our events or the farmers markets on Sundays. So thank you.
Oh, yeah, I
Right?
remembered. You purchase more than us.
No, it's okay. Not enough, never enough, but we're good.
So I wish to add few points. So one, a person gets fat because the food combination is not right. And also we need certain elements that from what we eat, we cannot get it. So we eat more than what we need from, let's say, bread, and we don't get those minerals we need, so we get fat. There are some other points next time.
You know, so many people say I follow like different like vegan coaches, like vegan athletes and all that. And I'm glad you brought that up at the beginning, Toby, when you said that even beans, there's a lot of, you know, beans, grains, right? We have to take them more as starches and the carbs more than the protein. Like if you're having the beans, things like that, a lot of times your body, like you're saying, Sharam, it's reacting more to the starch or the carbs of that food instead of the protein you're counting for that day, especially when you're bodybuilding or you're creating. But it comes down to every specific body. That's why we all look so different too, right? So I can get affected by grains or beans very differently than somebody with better metabolism. Could that be right? Something like that? And you know, what do you call it? Measurements is everything too. It does come down to
Portions.
portions, yeah.
Thank you, Toby. I'm out.
You're welcome,
Thank you.
Linda. So good seeing you.
Yeah.
Or sort of.
All
All
right.
right, thank you. All right.
We'll go ahead and close the meeting out, everybody.
All right. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thanks for being here.
Bye.
Good evening.
And bye.